Hello.
Hi.
We're all showing up just a little bit,
We're all here. We're
we're all
making our way into the virtual room.
right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and
There's
say
Brea.
hello, Brea.
Hi.
So thank you to everyone who's here watching our Q&A for the world premiere now of Lucky, Natasha Kermani's Lucky. We have with us the director, Natasha, writer and star Brea Grant, and cinematographer Julia Swain. So I want to allow you guys to all say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Everybody.
This is interesting that we are here doing this premiere as opposed to, I was practically driving to Austin a few months ago when this was all supposed to happen. But I think this is kind of it's kind of a democratization of this part of the industry a little bit, that sort of allowed us to now you don't have to have the funds to go and stay in a big city during a big festival, and you can, watchers or viewers across Canada are able to see your film at one of the premier genre film festivals in the world. I mean, this is top tier. So I know this may be a bit of a sore subject, but we're here. How do you guys feel about this being the first place for your film to show?
Yeah. I mean, look, Fantasia is rad. It's a little bit bittersweet for me personally. I had never physically attended Fantasia before. And honestly, it had been a dream to have a movie at Fantasia. So it's great. But, I know that there's so much more to the experience, being there. And I love Montreal. It's one of my favorite cities. So it's bittersweet. But yeah, I think the Fantasia, the people who attend are really going to love the movie. So yeah, it's great. It's great.
What do you think, Brea?
Yeah, I mean, when Natasha and I were together when we found out that South by had been canceled, and this was so early in COVID that we were like, this is wild. We couldn't believe it. We thought that it was a complete overreaction, which we were very, very wrong about.
Little did we know. Yeah.
We were together and we immediately went to a bar and started drinking because I think for us, taking the movie, you work really hard on these things and you don't get to celebrate it very often. Maybe we got to have like a wrap party, but it's not like, you just kind of work your ass off for so long. You want something where you're like, no, this is like for us. And I think as a person who attends a lot of film festivals, just as a fan, I have some jealousy of the people who get to stand up there, who made good movies and they get to talk about their movies. And I think I was really looking forward to that. But here we are on Zoom, which is kind of similar.
And Julia, how do you feel about all this?
I mean, I'm stoked about Fantasia. South by was obviously, I'd never been, and I was very excited to take this film that we had worked so hard on. But yeah, I'm excited for its future, and I'm thankful to be here. So.
Well, it's got a life ahead of it already. I know the news just broke a few days ago that it was acquired by Shudder, so that's really great for all the Canadian American. I guess is it also across territories as well?
Yeah, so it's all English speaking. So it'll be UK, Australia, North America. Yeah, we're super thrilled. I mean, honestly, even in the earliest conversations that we had about this film, Shudder was part of that conversation, and it was sort of Brea and I were dreaming, this would be a great platform for us, great platform for the film. And Shudder, I think, is only growing. I mean, this is not like a paid endorsement for Shudder, but I think their curation is getting really interesting. So they're really trying to find interesting pieces, in addition to sort of like all the horror stuff that people want to watch. So I think it just feels right for us. So I'm jazzed. I think it'll be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. I mean, part of the reason that I'm here hosting this Q&A in the first place is that I hosted a Q&A for the Fantasia Frontiers a couple of months ago with some of the acquisitions agents from Shudder and some of the other, different segments of the industry. And, because of all of this, the COVID and the quarantine, they're blowing up. So, people are at home, they have to have stuff to watch, and this is a great thing to watch. Brea, I'm amazed that you're able to sit down here with us for a half an hour to do this Q&A, because you apparently never stop working. I was looking, I know some of your work, but then I went a little bit deeper to sort of, prepare for all this, and saw an insane number of credits, not to mention the fact that you also have, a premiere last night also, of a Canadian premiere last night of 12 Hour Shift, which I watched and really loved, I thought was great, which you directed and wrote. So you can breathe now. You can exhale a little bit.
She's working right now. She's literally on a job. She's communicating to us from work.
Bulgaria. I'm actually, hold on. First of all, I need to clean my camera. It looks like it's like smeared with Vaseline, and I feel like Juliet's probably losing her mind.
Go with it. No, go with it. I like it.
Okay,
She
sorry.
likes it. It's very avant-garde, Brea.
Okay,
We're into it.
You gotta look.
This computer is overused, I think. I'm in Bulgaria right now shooting a TV show. It's crazy. It's 6 a.m. here. I'm gonna go back to bed after this, I think, actually.
Well, that's
yeah, it's weird. It's I feel very fortunate. I mean, I've been at this a long time. I think like that is I've been in the industry for 10, almost 15 years. And I started as an actor, and I very early on in my career quit my day job and decided I was going to do acting full time. I was very fortunate. I was on Heroes, so I was able to quit. But I am a little bit of I mean, there's part of me that views acting a little bit as like it is a job in some ways. It is my passion, but it is also my job. So there's a lot of credits on there. Some I'm really proud of. Some I'm like, I just didn't have rent money for a couple of months and I needed to do a job. I'm not a dilettante. I can't just roll in and do the jobs that please me. I'm sort of like a journeyman actor or something. I've just been doing this shit for a long time and had to. you rack up credits on IMDb if you have to take every job that you're offered.
At the same time, a film like this, obviously, with your name not only on the poster, but also as the writer, this has to mean something more to you. Like, this has to be something that you really felt a great deal about, and it's got to be that much more significant as a performer.
Of course, yeah. It's my first, it would be my first solo feature film writing credit, my first film I co-wrote. So it is a huge thing. And I think for me, I spent so much of the first 10 years of my career in the film world not being able to be a part of the creative process until like the very end of the process, if that makes sense. As an actor, you're hired on at the very end. So this was such an amazing experience because I got to be on from the very beginning, obviously, because the idea was mine and I got to shape it in the way I wanted to. And then got to be involved in all of the creative and watch Natasha do amazing things. And yeah, of course, it's like a huge deal, and very exciting to get to see it make it to the end. I haven't had any caffeine yet, so yeah, sorry.
They don't have those little, like the little coffee machine with the pre-made.
I'm in an apartment. So it's like a different. I don't have like the weird like hotel like coffee area.
So was this always a film that you were just writing and had no intention of directing? You were just trying to send it out and see, what kind of response you got back, or had you at some point thought about taking on everything?
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I was open, obviously, because we ended up where we are. I had sent it a couple places, and I was attached as a director at various other spots. But they just didn't work out because indie filmmaking. And when I took it to Epic, they loved Natasha and they were like, we want Natasha to direct this and you to star in this. And I was like, that seems all right. I like Natasha. I'm a huge fan of Imitation Girl. I think she has real vision and would do an amazing job with the movie.
Yeah. Well, and, Imitation Girl and this film have, similar thematic threads, as far as, this film is very obviously about the experience that I cannot share with you guys, but it's about the experience of being a woman, and you know, a kind of fear and dread that can follow you everywhere just by virtue of existing in a world that is not friendly to you all the time, right?
Right.
And with Imitation Girl, it's similarly about the experience of a woman who is put into a position where she is seen as only this object, right? And then sort of the mirror reflection of that, and the two meeting, and it, you know, it's very similar. So Natasha, is this the kind of I guess film that you see yourself working in consistently, like?
Yeah, no, yeah, totally. It's interesting that you say that. I guess I hadn't seen it in that clear of a way, but I think you're looking from the outside in, so that is clear. I think for me, it's like there needs to be a strong theme, right? So there needs to be a strong theme. Obviously, the writing is there, and Brea's dialogue is great, and all that is there. But the script had such a singular vision, right? So there was really something for me to grab onto thematically. There's a broad picture that she's trying to paint. And I think similar to Imitation Girl and the other projects that I've either written or been drawn to, it's kind of that similar approach, right? So it has a macro meaning and it has a micro meaning. Sorry, this cat is like messing with my computer. So yeah, I would say in that sense, I don't think that I'm necessarily, need to always have this sort of woman versus world theme with everything, but I think that it just worked out that way. But yeah, I would say also the other thing, I'm very aware of scale, right? And fitting scale to the resources that are available to me. And both Imitation Girl and Lucky, I read it with that in mind, right? So when I sat down and I read Lucky, I could see how the resources that we would potentially have if we were to move forward could fit in together. And this is fun, okay, I see the challenge here. I see what we have. I see Brea at the center of it, and then we build the world around her. So I think this is a very sort of vague thing that I'm saying, but to have some sort of a centerpiece is very important for me, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, and absolutely. I think this is where Julie can start talking about the actual production, because the film is centered quite a bit around this very distinct house, right? There's a very distinct sort of like loft attic area that is very visually arresting. There's a stairwell that takes a lot of action takes place in the stairwell. So Julia, how was it? Like, was that a house? Like, was that an existing location? Did you build a lot of sets for the film? It feels like from outside the house that I'm looking at it.
We're laughing at the idea that we built sets.
Yeah. Yeah, we built 0 sets.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars. How many sets did you build?
Yeah, it was an existing house, and we tried to find something where I think in this scale too, it's like, how do you photograph a movie that takes place in a lot in one location, and how do you photograph it in an interesting way, and how do you add dynamic in that way and really take advantage of the spaces it offers. I think you get to see a lot of great places in that house, and we really utilized it to the max ability. But yeah, so 0 sets. It was all all for real at night, which was also fun.
Oh, I'm sure that was an interesting adventure to take on. There are really, like I said, a lot of great shots. The shot where the man shows up from that sort of triangular loft area. There's the downward facing shot after he gets pushed off of the stairway. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in there, and then we'll come back to it. I have in my notes here for you parking garage, so we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because that was amazing, and such a cool way to sort of end the film. Now, Brea, the film itself is about a woman who is not perfect. Now, that is something that is not super easy to get past people who want to pay for a movie to be made, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one thing that I really love is being able to see women be assholes on screen. Not to say that May is necessarily an asshole, but sometimes she's an asshole, you know? And it a lot of it takes place sort of in the context of, you know, what she does for a living. She writes these self-help books, right? Her book, Go It Alone, you know, is about sort of fending for yourself and making your own way, which kind of relates back to the experience of the film that you're making here. Like you said yourself, you've worked a lot. You've worked on some things that you're proud of. You've worked on some things that have paid some bills. But really, if you ask anybody about how to find work in this crazy industry that you work in, it is to write your own stuff, right? Write stuff that you have to, that can only be made by you, you know? And so that kind of connects back to May's self-help work. So was that intentional? Like, was that intentional to sort of parallel the career that you're building for yourself with this character that you're building?
Oh, that's interesting. No, it wasn't intentional. I mean, I'm sure maybe it's bubbling under the surface. I'm not sure, but you know, in early drafts of the script, she wasn't a self-help author. She was just an author. And then as the script went through more and more changes, I ended up putting that in because I just thought it was such a I find the self-help world to be fascinating. I definitely am guilty of reading a few self-help books, but I also think to be one of the self-help gurus is such a weird life because you have to present this sort of perfect image to the world, and really like believe your own BS or be able to say a bunch of BS and pretend that you believe it. And I think that that's the struggle with May, is that she's kind of like drank her own Kool-Aid in some ways, which is why at the end she does make a lot of dark choices, because she's like, oh, well, I live in this world in which to be a successful woman, I have to like step on the heads of other women and climb my way out and do things alone. And I don't need anybody else because the world has betrayed me. And this is how I behave. And even when once she realizes there's all these other women going through the same thing she's going through, she's still not really ready to like combine with other women and fight the struggle of these men showing up and killing all of them, because she has bought into this mantra that she has created. So yeah, I definitely don't live my life that way. This is not a biopic. I'm definitely playing and writing a character who I don't think is particularly likable, but it's something great that Natasha was on board from the beginning. It's hard. I mean, both this and 12-Hour Shift have these sort of unlikable female anti-heroes. I mean, May is even more unlikable than I think in Mandy and 12-Hour Shift. I think she makes a lot of cruel and weird choices throughout. And I think the brilliance of Natasha is that she created a movie in which you want to stick with the story.
Right. Well, and even
but she sold me on that. I mean, when I got to that third act of the script and she decided to when Brea, the writer, decided to make that choice, I was sold, because I said, oh, she's talking about real shit right now, right? It's not Final Girl. It's like, this is a 20th century final woman, right? She's cynical. She's dealt with this shit. She's an adult. And Brea is bringing up these like the dirtier corners of the conversation about feminism, right? What is intersectionality? What does it mean? And I was very drawn in by that. So I just want to say that was actually not something that scared me, but something that pulled me deeper into the project.
Yeah, because we've seen that final girl who would like suddenly have this huge life change at the end and bond together with her sisters. Like, I feel like I have seen that story, and it is a great story worth telling, but I'm not scared of a movie with like an unhappy protagonist who doesn't make the decisions that we would hopefully personally make.
Right.
Well, and it is sort of, you know, hinted at the beginning, where she's at her publisher and the publisher is suggesting the next book, Go It Alone together. And then, you know, later on in the film, that doesn't necessarily pan out the way. And you can see May at that moment sort of not really buying into what he's selling, you know. So that's also pretty interesting. Let's see. So let's go to the title of the film, Lucky. It's mentioned a few times throughout the film. And you can just sort of see the sting behind May's eyes when her publisher says that she's lucky, or later on when the chorus of care workers are trying to calm her down from her hysteria, her craziness, and saying that she's lucky. And, you know, when in fact, May has worked her ass off. You know, that's kind of the whole point here. You know, she's somewhat arrogant in her position because she understands that she's done all this work and she has earned her place in this world that she's trying to navigate. And lucky doesn't quite cut it when it comes to being a descriptor for her position, especially now that she's dealing with all this stuff. So where does that come from? I feel like it's fairly obvious, but if you would care to elaborate on sort of the title and the way it goes with the themes of the film.
Britney Spears. I think Brea is really funny. I think she has a really dark humor. And as you guys can tell just from hearing her talk right now, and I think the title is perfect. It sets it up. It's a satire. It is completely the opposite of luck. Being, you know, born into this world as we are is not lucky. And I think that it's just funny, and it opens up the conversation in a really beautiful way so that we can move from this sort of sardonic, satirical first act or two of the movie, and then move into this much darker material that we're trying to address by the end of the movie. And I think it's literally the entry point into it, even though we don't actually say the title until the end of the movie. So it's actually meant to be a postscript. So you hear it said to her throughout the film, but then the last image you see is her face, she attacks, and then you see the title for the first time. So it is meant to sort of be a PS to the movie.
Right. Now, the other women in the film are, you know, you've got Edie, her assistant, right, who doesn't make it all the way to the end. And you've got her sister-in-law, Sarah, who is that's the first time that we realize that maybe May isn't alone in this struggle that she's facing, right? She hides it very well. Sarah does, May does not. And I think that feels, again, sort of like a commentary on how different people deal with this situation, right? Because everyone's fighting their own private battles that no one else knows about. Sometimes you don't want anyone else to know about those particular things. You want to keep them to yourself because you feel like you can handle it, or it would reflect poorly upon you. May is not that type of woman. May is more upfront. She's seeking help through the entire film and being shut down. So how do you feel about that sort of dichotomy as far as like these two particular personality types? Like, is that something that you see a lot? Again, a man, I can only see as much as I see, but it feels fairly familiar as far as like people that I know, like my wife, her friends, and things like that. That's sort of you never know what's going on behind closed doors for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Brea, do you want to talk about writing Sarah? I can also say the choices we made.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that these are a little bit of the two options you have as a woman when going through something like this. And you're kind of like fucked either way. Can I say fucked on the Fantasia Virtual Festival panel?
Right now, or it's all out there.
Right.
That's the thing that'll happen on Fantasia this week. So
I think either way, like, I mean, I see women deal with this in two different ways for sure. You see women talking openly about it. You see the Me Too movement, but I know so many people, myself included, who didn't really talk about the things we had gone through during that movement, just because that's just not the way our personalities, we don't feel safe doing it, basically. And I don't think it's required to talk publicly about these things. And honestly, either way, there's not a lot of great choices. you know, there's this like myth that women come out and say something about what they're going through, or they have these vulnerable moments online or something, and that maybe it will like help their careers or something, and it truly doesn't. It's I think that they really are seeking help or trying to find community or help other women. And either way, it's tough and hard, and none of it really regardless, you've gone through this traumatic event, and nothing you can do can really solve that. Therapy, I guess.
Yeah, and just to build on that a little bit, one thing that was really important that we talked about is that if May was going to connect really with anybody in the movie, it would have been Sarah. And I think that's one of the more tragic parts of the movie, is that ultimately these two women are not able to connect. And of course, she's not really able to connect with Edie or any of the other characters. But, you know, Sarah makes herself available as much as she can, but it's only so far. And ultimately, it's a bridge too far for them to really connect and to help each other. And I think that's like a very, very tragic aspect to it. And this is May's story. So it's not Sarah's story. It's not Edie's story. It's May's story. So Sarah, how we experience Sarah throughout the movie is through May's perspective. And what happens is what I was just saying, where they're ultimately not able to aid each other.
Right. So I'm looking at the Q&A channel we have here, and I have a question that I think I was going to bring up, but someone else brought it up, so I might as well let them say it. Sean Kelly asks, says, there was a discussion in the Discord channel about the film being an allegory for gaslighting, and I was just wondering if that was the intent. So whoever would like to take that question.
Natasha?
It's a flavor, for sure. It's definitely a flavor. I think the world, I mean, that's a simplistic way, right? If this was a Twilight Zone episode, people would call it the Twilight Zone gaslighting episode. So for sure, I mean, the world is distorting around her. And when you're being gaslit, that's what that feels like. So the movie is suggesting what it feels like to be at the center of that, as the world around you is twisting itself to justify this totally insane situation. So yeah, I think gaslighting is a good word for it. I think gaslighting feels trivial in a lot of ways, just the word of it. So yes, but we're using it, you know, to sort of explore the deeper issue, which is why this woman gets trapped, right? She can't get out. She's stuck in this gaslight, you know, Alice in Wonderland through the looking glass nightmare version of her reality, this gaslit version, and she's stuck. So it's not, look at the world gaslight her. It's why is she stuck there? Let's talk about that. You know, why can't she dig herself out?
I think that's fair.
I'm glad people are talking about that, though. That's great. That is definitely part of our intention. So,
you know, one of the things that actually came up in several of my notes that I was taking for the film was the fact that, you know, toward the end of the film, May's being told that she is being ridiculous. Like, that is like from the dialogue, and that feels like something that if someone told me that, I would go insane. And so I can only imagine that, you know, women being told that all the time, because I hear it all the time, that, you know, you're acting crazy, or you're being crazy, or you're being ridiculous, can only take it for so long, you know. This film felt very much to me like The Entity, if you guys have seen The Entity.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Barbara Hershey movie. It felt like there's actually something physically happening to this woman that she cannot explain to people outside. They do not believe her, but that doesn't make it not so, you know, which is not quite gaslighting in that way, you know, because gaslighting is sort of convincing something that something is happening that's actually not. This is kind of the opposite of that, you know?
Yeah.
Let's see. There was another question that was actually, again, one of the ones that I was going to bring up that I mentioned earlier, and I wanted to make sure we have time for it. And that was Julia. Can you talk a little bit about the artistic choices and cinematographic approach to the final parking garage scene? So that was looked like a pretty huge piece of work for you, as far as laying out everything, getting the lighting all correct, having all the staging and the timing and everything correct. So looked hard.
Yeah.
She loved it. She loved it.
No, it was a fun challenge. And, you know, I think going back to what Natasha was saying is it is this nightmarish version of May's reality. And so Natasha and I decided to really push ourselves in a bold direction in terms of like changing up the look for that third act. And, you know, in the beginning, you don't really know where the movie's going. You don't know it's going to take the turns it takes. And, you know, it's set in a little bit more of authenticity of just, you know, present day, everyday life of May. And then, you know, for that third act in the garage, we decided to kind of, you know, do something visually that pushed that question of like, what is reality and what is, you know, what is this film saying ultimately, and what is May's world, you know, and who is the man, and all these things. So yeah, it was a huge setup, but we had a great team and we pulled it off.
It looks fantastic. It's, you know, obviously one of the bigger, more extravagant visual pieces in the film, and it definitely works very well to sort of convey that, again, that like everyone's fighting their own private battles. They've all got their own little hells that they're stuck in, and the fact that May is just trying to fight her own, you know, and for whatever that means for her as a person, you know. So there was another question in the Q&A that's, this was early on, I missed it. It says, from Karen Wan, says, what was up with the bathroom scene where she's washing the blood off her face? The round mirror reflection wasn't matching. Was that intended to mean something? I get the feeling it was, so I would like you guys to talk as much as you feel comfortable.
I love mirrors. Like, I think if you can get 3 shots in one shot using mirrors, like, beautiful. So that's how we set it up. And then, yeah, so we were basically looking for ways to start knocking May's world off. It's really that simple. It was just little ways to do it. So a lot of it is in the production design. So when you guys come back to watch it on Shudder, you can look out and see things in the house are actually changing around her. So as the movie progresses, you know, the paintings behind her are becoming a little bit more violent. The female figures that you see throughout the film are becoming a little bit scarier. So the mirror was just one more expression of that. And it's probably the most, I mean, besides the parking lot scene, probably the most outright example. But yeah, we just wanted to show that time was starting to fracture, her environment was starting to fracture, and you know, what she's seeing is not necessarily a real reflection of what's actually happening around her. So yeah, so it was really, and I mean, again, you know, one thing that's brilliant that Julia is really able to do well is, you know, with limited resources, how can we pull off these really ambitious things? So with the mirror, with, you know, the parking lot scene, with all of these things, you look at it and you say, okay, I have X, Y, and Z. How can we use that? Where can we take from other scenes and put into this other stuff? So that has to be a discussion from the very beginning. Otherwise, I don't think you can explore the space of starting to, you know, really dive deep with your production design and your lens choice and your lighting choices. I mean, Julia swapped out all those fucking lights that you see down the aisle of the parking garage. She switched them all out. You can't do that on a movie this size, you know? So it's a reallocation of stuff. So anyway, this is my long-winded way of saying the mirror was just something we did in post. So we filmed it and then cut it out and replaced it. We delayed it by like 45 frames or something like that. So it's, her reflection is off.
Was that scripted, or was it just sort of an idea that came up later on?
Just found it. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Let's see what other questions. I think we have another question in the Q&A. Okay, so I will preface this by saying that my colleague posted an interview. Izzy Lee posted an interview with the two of you earlier today about the film that I read and was great. And it addresses this a little bit, but since she's not here right now, I don't think, I'll let you address it. It is from Antonio. It says, can you elaborate a bit more about Ted's disappearance, especially as he seemed to know what was happening?
Our favorite question.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, so when I first started taking the script out, people were like, a lot of people's response were like, what about Ted? What happened to Ted? And I think the one thing Natasha and I sort of bonded on was I was like, this is not Ted's movie. It's not Ted's movie. It's not Ted's story. This is not Ted's world. And once we enter into this like weird, alternate, surrealist universe, Ted is actually not a part of this universe in the way that he is a part of her life, maybe at the beginning of the movie. And for me, just writing it from personal experience and going through an event, not quite like this, obviously, but an event similar to this, I will say it destroyed my relationship at the time. And my boyfriend's response was similar to Ted's, where he just had to check out after, because he couldn't deal with me dealing with it, essentially. He couldn't deal with me dealing, and he essentially checked out. So some of the things Ted says are actually from my real life. So I don't think it's that crazy. But a lot of people, when they read the script, they're like, I would never behave this way. And I don't think you know, maybe until you're in the experience, about how you would behave when dealing with a person who has dealing with a PTSD of sorts.
So
Also, we just wanted to throw her world off. I'll just jump in really quick. Also, it's just a complete destruction of her normal life. So Ted is part of her normal everyday life. He does something completely unexpected, and we move forward in this new paradigm.
Well, and it's not as if Ted disappears from the story. She is constantly looking for him and trying to find out where he went. It's just that he is not there anymore. So it's not as though he's disappeared from the story. He's just disappeared from the actual day-to-day goings on of her life. So I think that's worth noting also. One thing I want to mention that is not necessarily thematically relevant is I always, as a person of color, as a brown American, enjoy seeing people who are not white on screen. So I want to thank you for that. The South Asian representation in the film was pretty strong. And Natasha, I know you're from a family of you're Iranian, right? Part Iranian.
Yep.
And that was also part of your previous film as well. There was an Iranian family in there as well.
Yes.
Now, was that something that you brought to the film, or was it just kind of looking for the best people for the parts or whatever?
I don't think they're written as anything specific in the script. So I think that was something, that I was able to come in and bring to the table. But I think we were all kind of, immediately, Brea and I were like, great, let's diversify. Let's get some real reflection of the world that we actually live in this movie. And so I think we actually cast Ted first. So we cast Ted, and then we cast Sarah after Ted. So Ted, it's interesting. I was actually specifically looking for a comedian. So we found Dhruv, and then quickly after we found Dhruv, we found Kosar, and they're perfect. They're perfect. I think they found that nice balance. But yeah, of course, you always have to look. You have to do the work. No one is going to just say, "Great, let's put a non-white person in this role." No, unfortunately, we live in a world. We have to say, "I am looking for,"
Right.
blah blah blah. So, it's a conscious choice for sure.
Well, it makes a difference, as far as, with the film, you also have, all of your heads of department, main people in the crew positions are women as well, which, again, super important. Great to see. It really changes the way the film feels. It changes the way the experience is for everyone, in a good way. If it was the same movie, we wouldn't be talking about it right now, as we've always seen.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting close to wrapping up here.
And can I just add on to that really quickly, because we had a pretty, we were pretty even. We had a lot of women in department heads, but we had some really key men a part of this film as well. For example, our editor is a man, and he and I had a really eye-opening and very interesting conversation where he sat me down and he basically said, if you see me making choices that don't make sense because I'm looking at it from my perspective, from a male perspective, please let me know and let's have that conversation, which nobody had ever said that to me. A man had never said that to me before. And I thought that was so interesting. And then my response, surprised me. And I said, no, I want to know. I want to know what you're seeing, because you're seeing something different than Brea and I and Julia are seeing. So, we're making this movie for everybody. So we want to have that 360 viewpoint. So I really do think it is about diversity. We don't want to be a monolith. Even if it's like a kick-ass girl power monolith, we want all perspectives to be honored and a part of the creation of this movie. So because men live in the same world that women live in. So, I really valued that personally.
Brea?
Yes. That was a good answer.
Right. Yes. Brea says yes. Also, like I said, I think we're about 10 minutes over time actually. We were scheduled for half an hour, but
Okay.
I would not lose any of it for a second. I think this was glad we had a chance to talk. And when is your film showing again?
You could say.
Wednesday.
No. I put my phone away, so I wouldn't.
I know. Oh my gosh.
It's on the schedule.
Yeah.
It is scheduled to play again.
Yes, I think it's Wednesday.
Wednesday? Okay. So if you somehow ended up in the Q&A without seeing the film, sorry, spoiler alert later. But, you can see it again Wednesday. If you want to go back, like Natasha said, and pick up those Easter eggs of the images in the house and stuff like that, I think, I could watch this a couple more times. Honestly, it's a great film, and there's a lot there to unpack, and a lot of things that I'm fascinated by. I think you guys did a great job, and thank you so much for allowing us to share it and for talking with me about it. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you,
I'm going to say goodbye to the Q&A audience.